want to kind of introduce this before we get started. The way that I've designed this fundamentals class is to kind of work you through the poses that you'll see most frequently in a yoga class. So the first week is just an introduction to the standing poses, which are kind of the main basis of every yoga class. You'll have mainly standing poses as the vast majority, probably 45% of the class, 50% of the class is standing postures with a little bit of warm up and a little bit of cool down at the end. And that's how each class will kind of build on, will progress from what we learn. So this first week, we'll look at the standing postures and just kind of a simple introduction of the standing postures and the anatomy that goes with those standing postures. And then next week, we'll work more with the spine and core in relation to the standing postures, as well as some of the other warm-up postures. And then from there, we'll go into looking more at the pelvis and the relationship of the lower body. So the lower extremities, the legs, the feet, and the pelvis. And then the last week, we'll kind of start to move you in towards vinyasa, which is that sun salutation that usually is when people go to a yoga class for the first time, they get thrown off because that's the first thing that you start to do when you go into a yoga class. And if you don't know how to do that, then it can be very intimidating. So we'll just kind of do a slow introduction to that in the last, but we'll build the building blocks towards that. So this week, we're going to start, and I'm going to mute you all at this point in time. And Cindy, if you want to put your camera on at this time, you are welcome to do so. I will be the only one to see you.
Do I put share screen or?
That little camera, if you look down up in the top right corner, there are 3 dots. If you look on that, you can see start video. Actually, I can ask you to start video. There we go. All right. So now that I've muted you, do either of you have blocks? Just raise your hand if you do have a block. And if you don't, I'll talk about it later. Okay, no, all right. Cool. So we are gonna start lying on our backs. So come down. If you have a yoga mat, great. If you don't, it's all right. And if you have a yoga mat, bend your knees and separate your feet mat distance apart. If you don't have a mat, just think about taking your feet slightly wider than your hips and then allowing your knees to knock together. So falling in towards each other so that the knees support each other. And then adjust your hips so that you feel an even amount of weight on your hips. And adjust your shoulder blades so that you feel an even amount of weight on your shoulder blades. So usually at the beginning of each yoga class, you'll start with some breath work. And yoga and the breath are very much intertwined. And you will notice as you first start to do yoga that you'll probably hold your breath. So I will remind you frequently to breathe. But if you do find yourself holding your breath at that moment, just know that that's normal, especially when you first start and you start to think about things. So with that awareness, allow your mind to shift to the breath now. So just noticing your inhalations and your exhalations. And bringing your hands to rest on your lower belly. So perhaps the heels of your hands can sit on your hip points. Those are those bones at the front of your hips. Sometimes people refer to them as the headlights of the hips. So if you take your fingertips, you can feel those hard bony points at the front of your hips. So the heels of your hands rest on your hips and your fingertips rest towards the lower belly, so right above where the pubic bone is. And just notice what you feel beneath your hands. Notice if you feel your breath move in this area at all. And if it doesn't right away, that's okay. And start to shift your awareness to your exhalation, so where you breathe out. And just notice your exhalations. Notice how long the exhalation is. Notice if you allow yourself to fully exhale or if you rush to your next inhalation. And see if, as you sit with your exhalation, if you can complete your exhalation. And so often we focus on creating the right inhalation. But oftentimes, if we allow ourselves to shift to the exhalation and just that full completion of the breath out, we start to notice that the inhalation starts to automatically deepen into the belly. Notice if you feel any tension or gripping around your jaw and your tongue, allowing the teeth to slightly separate and the root of the tongue to fall towards the throat. And as you soften, notice the reaction to your exhalation. And I'll, throughout the class, ask you to refer back to this exhalation, just making sure that you allow yourself that moment to let go and fully release the exhalation. Walk your feet so they are sit bone distance apart. So your sit bones are those bony points at the bottom of your butt, the bottom of the pelvis. So walk your heels sit bone distance apart. Keep your left foot on the ground and bend your right knee towards the chest and just grab the knee right below the knee, the front of the shin, intertwining your fingers together, and just allow the heaviness of your hands to draw the knee closer towards your chest or your belly, and keeping your hips on the ground. And then point the knee slightly out to your shoulder to draw it closer towards your shoulder, and deepening into the front of your hip crease. And then once you feel that depth, that release deeper into the hip crease, draw it a little bit more towards center again. And then take 2 more deep breaths, finally finding the full release of the exhalation. The softening of the throat, the softening of the jaw and the tongue. Continue to hold your right knee with your right hand. Grab your ankle with your left hand and start to pull your ankle towards you and then cross it over your left knee. So like a figure 4 with your right leg. Use your right hand inside your inner right thigh to press your knee a little bit more open. And dorsiflex your ankle. So what that means is you are pulling your toes towards your shin and stacking the heel directly below your ankle. We have a tendency for our heel to turn in, so if we can flex our ankle strongly, it stacks the ankle in neutral. Continue to press your right hand into your inner right thigh. So feeling the openness in your outer hip, the side of your hip. And release your right inner thigh and take your fingertips and reach in between your thighs. Then lift your left foot off the ground and grab behind your left thigh. So the closer you are to your knee, the further you're going to come. So take your hand as far up or down your thigh as you feel you can comfortably move into your hip. And then again, this time flexing both of your ankles. So pulling your toes towards your shin. And pushing your knee away from you. And not with your hands, but with the muscles to push your knee away from you. Return to the exhalation. Make sure you're exhaling fully. Softening the throat, softening the jaw and the tongue. Take your left hand and grab the outer edge of your right foot. Take your right hand and grab your right knee and set your left foot back to the ground. Take your right palm, place it inside your right knee. Push your knee away as you pull with your left hand. So your foot is coming towards you as you push your right knee away. Push the outer edge of your right foot into your left hand. And just notice what happens as you create that kind of barrier, that wall between your hand and your foot, that resistance. And then let go of your right knee. Take your right hand, grab the outer edge of your right foot. Press your left foot into the ground and lift your left hip off the ground as you bring top of your right thigh to the floor. So your foot is facing up towards the sky and your right heel is directly over your left hip is off the ground. Flex your ankle strongly and push the outer edge of your right foot, your hand, as you push your knee towards the ground. And again, just notice where that translates up into your knee and up. So pushing the knee towards the floor as you push the outer edge of your right foot into the floor or into your hand. Release the foot. Release the left hip back to the ground and bring your right foot back to the ground. Separate your feet mat distance apart and allow your knees again to knock together. And transition back to the awareness of the breath. The full exhalation, and notice what you feel right hip to left hip. And walk your heels back in line with your sit bones, knees over your heels. Keep your right foot on the ground. Grab your left knee, intertwining your fingers and bringing it below your knee to the shin, and just start to pull your knee to where you feel it stops. And then guide your knee towards your left shoulder, allowing it to deepen into the front of your left hip crease. So you're taking it into a slight external rotation to feel more depth in the hip crease, and then guide the knee back towards the chest. Keep your right foot on the floor. Cross your left ankle over your right knee. And use your left palm of your hand to press your inner thigh away from you. Dorsiflex your right ankle, so pull the toes towards your shins. Feel that stabilize your ankle and keep pushing the knee away from you. And you're going to use your right knee, lifting your foot off the ground, to push the leg closer towards your chest. And continue to push with your left hand into your knee. And then reach your left hand between your thighs, right hand on the outside of your right thigh, and grab behind your your thigh. So intertwining your fingers and taking your knee either further down or further up, depending on how open your hips feel. And continue to flex your ankles strongly, both of them. And push your knee away from you using the muscles to push your knee away from you. So your hands are still behind your thighs, just rotating the knee out. So we're taking the knee into external rotation, or the hip into external rotation by pushing the knee away. And grab your foot with your right hand, the outer edge of your foot with your right hand. Grab your knee with your left hand and take your right foot back to the floor. And you can bring your shin either as close to your chest or far away from your chest as is comfortable. Flex your ankle strongly. Push your foot into your hand as you push your hand into your knee. So the left hand is pushing your knee further away from you. Your right hand is pulling your foot closer to you. And switch. Grab your outer edge of your left hand left foot with your left hand. Right knee is still bent. Push the foot into the floor to lift the right hip off the ground and take the front of the left thigh to the floor. Look to make sure that your ankle is stacked directly above your knee. Flex your ankle strongly. And then start to press the outer edge of your left hand into your hand, left foot into your hand as you push the knee into the floor. So we're creating some stability in the hip as we open the hip. So we're not just stretching for the sake of stretching. We're stretching while building muscle awareness. Those muscles that create external rotation in the hip. And slowly drop your right hip back to the floor as you lift your left knee off. Bring both feet back to the floor. Separate your feet mat distance apart. Take your arms wide to the body, so T to the body, palms facing down. And just simply windshield wiper your knees side to side. So as you drop the knees to one side, you're going to come to the inner and outer edge of the opposite foot. So just allowing yourself to kind of unwind in your hips and unwind in your spine. Next time you rock onto the right side, rock all the way over and press yourself up to a seated position. So start in a cross-legged seated position. And just take a moment to make sure that you feel your sit bones on the floor. So there are these two bones that are at the bottom of your pelvis, which your weight should rest kind of on the tips of them. And usually we have a tendency to rock to the back edge of them, so slightly rock forward. And if this is hard in your low back, you can actually prop yourself up on a blanket or a block. Take your right hand out to the side, palm to the ground. Take your left hand out to the side and rotate the thumb up so that the palm faces the ceiling. So this is external rotation in the shoulder. And then reach the arm up beside your ear. And then push your rib cage to the left. So see if you can direct your breath into the right side rib cage. So we're in a lateral side bend of your spine. And if it feels right, you can walk your fingers a little forward out to the right and push the ribs a little further to the left. And then rotate your head under your left arm to look up towards the sky. And bring the left hand down, come back to center. Bring your hands to your shoulders and twist to the left. So as you twist to the left, take your right sit bone back so that you feel more of the twist in the thoracic spine. So see how far you can twist without using your hands. and then use your hand. So left hand plant behind your hip, right hand to the left knee. Use your hand against the knee to twist a little deeper and pull your right sit bone back. So try to keep the weight balanced on your sit bones. See if you can exhale fully. And release. Bring your left hand to the ground, to the left side. Bring your right arm out to the side. Rotate your palm up, so thumb points up and then back. Reach your bicep beside your ear, and then push your ribs to the right. See if you can exhale fully here. And perhaps the hand a little out to the left. Push the ribs a little further to the right, and then look under your left hand towards the sky. Right arm. Bring the right arm down, slide back up, hands to your shoulders. Keep your sit bones on the floor, twist to the right. See how far you can twist. Left sit bone reaches back, and then bring right hand to the floor behind your hip, left hand to the outside of the right knee. Use your left hand pressing against the knee to twist a little deeper. Make sure you're fully exhaling. And release forward. Switch the cross of your legs. So we're going to combine those two movements because when we side bend, we twist to the opposite side. So bring your right hand to the floor beside you. Left hand rotates open. Reach bicep beside your ear. Then start to twist to the left. Once you twist to the left, so your left shoulder is pulling back, your right shoulder will shift slightly forward. Maybe walk the hands a little further out to the right. Twist open to the left a little bit more, and then push the ribs to the left. Soften the throat, soften the jaw. Exhale fully. Left hand comes down. Come back up to center. Slide the left hand out to the side, palm to the ground. Right arm out, palm facing up. Lift the arm beside the ear, then start to twist the ribs to the right. So right shoulder draws back, left shoulder draws slightly forward. Walk the hands a little further to the left, push the ribs to the right, look up towards the sky. So it's as if you're playing peekaboo with your upper arm and you're going under it. Soften the throat, deepen the exhalation. Come back up. Bring the soles of your feet together. So this is called Baddha Konasana. Take your hands and slide them under the outer edges of your feet. So the ball mounts of the big toe are these knuckles right here, and your inner heel is right here. So as you pull up on the outer edges of your feet, press the ball mount of your big toe and your inner heel together. Press those together, lift up on the outer edges of your feet, and push your knees towards the floor. And then lift through the crown of your head. So as you lift up, imagine like someone pulling your hair up towards the sky, and your tailbone, the bottom of your sacrum, is reaching towards the floor. And your throat Your chin is drawing towards your throat. So if you think of like creating a triple chin, that real attractive double chin thing, and release. Separate your feet so your heels come to the floor. Ankles are dorsiflex, so toes towards your shin. And bring your hands behind your hips. So your feet are slightly wider than your hips. And we're gonna rock side to side. So rock onto your left hip and bring your right knee down. And then rock to the other side. So rock to your right hip, left knee down. And just do this a couple of times, noticing how much you have to shift the hips to touch the knee to the floor. And if it doesn't touch to the floor, that's okay. Just move back and forth. And then the next time you turn to the right, stay there. So position your knee, your left knee in line with your left hip. And if you can, ankle in line with your left knee. If that is too much on your hip, you can bring your heel closer to your hip. And then the same with the right. So right knee in line with your right hip, right ankle in line with your right knee. And dorsiflex your ankles. Bring your hands to the floor. Left hand comes between your two legs. Right hand is outside of your right hip. And shift your chest towards your right knee. Press down through your fingers and reach up through the crown of your head. Walk your hands forward of your left hand forward of your shin and just slightly bend out over your right knee. Inhaling, lifting up. And then exhaling, reaching belly out over your thigh, chest over your knee. So do this a few times. Making sure that that exhalation is complete. And shift up. Bring your right hand to your hip and then rock your hip back and forward. So shifting the hip back and shifting it forward. Stay forward. Keep your left knee on the ground and lift your left foot off the ground. Take your right hand to your hip, push it forward as you try to lift the foot higher. And this is harder than it sounds like it should be. I practice this a lot, and I know it's a lot of outer hip work to lift that foot off the ground. So just moving towards that. Release the foot back to the ground. Bring your right hand behind you. Left hand behind you. Shift back and lift your right leg off the ground. And again, I might make this look really easy, but this engages the stuff on the inner thighs. And these are the hip muscles that we don't really think of a lot. They're what help to stabilize, and they're what we often need to strengthen in order to actually reduce hip pain. Lower the leg down, hands behind the hips, switch through center, and come to the opposite side. So make sure knees and hips are in line and knees and ankles are in line, so that 90-degree bend. Hands on either side of your left leg. Twist your torso so that your knee points out over your left knee. Chest points out over your left knee. And then walk the hands forward, right hand coming forward to the left shin. Press down through the fingers to lengthen the spine, and then fold forward, bringing your belly and your chest out over your left leg. And do that just a few times. Noticing what that feels like in your hip. Both of your hips, actually. So the front leg is in external rotation, while the back leg is in internal rotation. Then lift up. Bring your left hand to the ground, right hand to your right hip, and then shift the hip forward and back. So now we're moving more into that internal rotation of the back leg, as we are also kind of testing that external rotation in the front hip. Shift forward. Lift your left foot off the ground. And what I always find is that I'm surprised at how different both my hips are. For me, the left hip to lift the left foot off the ground, I have to struggle a lot more. I have to work a lot harder. Bring the foot back to the ground. Right hand comes behind the right hip. Shift back, lift the left leg off the ground. Bring the leg back to the ground. Walk your hands forward in front of your left knee and come up into a tabletop position. So we're bringing back the hips into neutral. We'll return into this neutral position time and time again. Big toes to touch, knees slightly wider than hips. Walk the hands forward of the shoulders. Press the hands down towards the floor and forward towards the wall in front of you. Use that to press the hips back. Keep looking between your thumbs and keep pressing the hips back. And then lower the forehead to the floor. So we're coming into child's pose or balasana. And then shift forward back to tabletop. Sit your hips back towards your heels and come up onto your knees. So step your right foot forward. I'm going to turn this way so it's my right foot. Step your right foot forward. You want to position your knee directly above your ankle joint. Your left hip is directly over your knee. And then you're going to take your left foot and turn it towards the long back edge of your mat so that you're facing me. And if your knee is uncomfortable, you can always roll up your mat to double it up or to take a blanket under your knee. So right knee is in line with right hip. Left hip is directly over left knee. Take your hand and place it behind your knee. So you're going to create that resistance as if your hand is a wall and your knee is pressing into that hand and into that wall. And as you do that, you're going to feel that your outer hip is rolling down towards the floor. At the same time, isometrically drag your right heel towards your left knee. So hopefully what you're feeling is some engagement in your outer right hip. And if you don't now, that's okay. Then reach your arms out to the side. See if you can keep that awareness of the outer hip. Bring your right hand inside your right knee and press the right hand into the knee. Start to roll the rib cage towards the left side of your rib cage. Palm facing up. Reach the bicep towards the ear. Keep rotating ribs to the left as you side bend and bring your forearm down inside your knee. Reach up, arms to a T, hands to the floor, and bring your right knee back down to the floor. Big toes touch. Send your hips back towards your heels as you walk your hands forward. Look between your thumbs. Reach the hips back further. And then lower forehead to the floor to child's pose. And again, feeling what you feel in your hips. Noticing right side to left side. Hands underneath your shoulders, press back up to tabletop. Come up to the knees. Bring your left foot out in front of you. And this time we'll move by taking the leg out to the side. So make sure heel is in line with your left knee. And left knee is over your left ankle, so that's your right knee. Bring your hand to the outside of your left knee, make that barrier, the wall, and press your knee into your hand and resist back as much with the hand as you can. Start to isometrically drag as if you were trying to drag the mat towards your right knee. And turn your rib cage towards the right side. So your torso is facing forward. Notice as you push your knee into your hand that your outer hip rolls down towards the floor. Keep that awareness, arms out to the side. Bring the back of the left hand inside the left knee. Turn your right palm up. Start to rotate the ribs more towards the right hand. And then reach right bicep towards ear as you slide either your forearm or your elbow inside your left knee. So side bending. So front leg or bent knee is an external rotation. Lift up, arms out to the side. Hands to the floor, knee to the floor, big toes touch. Walk the hands forward, look between the thumbs, push the hips back towards the heels as you lower your forehead down to the floor. Notice what you feel. And bring your hands underneath your shoulders, press up, and stand up. So stand with your feet hip distance apart and look down at the outer edges of your feet and make sure they're parallel. So if you were to draw a line between your second and third toe, it would align with the center of your heel. Bring your hands to your hips. Find the hip points again and just allow your fingertips to rest on your hip points. And this is more or less as a reminder that we want to keep them facing forward like the headlight shining straight forward. Shift your weight onto your right foot and bring your left foot beside your right foot, bending your left knee forward. And notice what happened to your hip points. Notice as you did that, did this hip pop out and this hip point drop? Bring your hand to your right buttock and pull it in. So the hip points are still in line. Keep the hip points pointing forward as you turn the knee as far out to the side and stack your ankle or your heel on your right ankle. So hip points pointing forward. You'll notice there's a tendency for this to lift up, draw it down. That means you have to engage the outer left hip. Right hip stays engaged. See if you can bring your foot to your inner calf. Notice if the hip points shift. Notice if that outer right hip wants to give up and engage it. Pushing the knee down towards the floor and pulling it out. Release. Bring your hands to heart center. Step your feet wide. And then bring your arms wide. So in this position, you want your ankles to be underneath your wrist, which feels wide, but trust that your hips are strong enough to support you. Turn your left toes in slightly, turn your right toes in slightly, and turn your left foot out 90 degrees. If you looked at your left heel, it would align with your right heel. Then bring your hands back to your hip points. And again, think of the hip points as shifting as little as possible. Start to bend the right knee and then straighten. Bend the right knee and straighten. Bend the right knee. Straighten, bend the right knee, hold. Just like we did with the foot on the knee on the floor, take your right hand to the outside of your right knee. Find that barrier, so knee presses into hands, hands press into knees. Again, you might feel the outer hip engaged, drawing the tailbone or the sit bone towards the floor. Fingertips to the pelvis, notice, are you leaning? And how can you bring it back to center? Look down inside your right knee. First of all, your knee is stacked directly above your ankle joint. or slightly behind it, but see if you can take it directly above. And you should be able to see your big toe inside your right knee. Bring your arms out to the side. Look towards your right hand and rotate your ribs towards your right hand. Keep your ribs rotated towards your right hand as you look out over your left hand. Hands to your hips, straighten your right leg. Step your feet back together. Outer edges of your feet parallel. Look down at your left foot. Step your right foot beside your left foot and bend your left knee forward. Hands to your hip points. Notice if you shifted, outer left hip has to engage in order to keep that stability. Keep the hips pointing forward as you start to rotate the knee out to the side. Take your heel to your left ankle. Keep pushing the right hip forward as you push the knee out. Hug the left hip in so you're engaging the glutes. Squeeze it. Perhaps take your foot to your calf. Notice if the right hip lifts up, draw it down. Notice if it pulls back, draw it forward. Keep pushing the knee down and back as you push the right hip forward. Release. Step your feet wide. Bring your arms wide, ankles below your wrist. Turn your left toes in slightly. Turn your right toes out 90 degrees. Pause to make sure heel of your right foot is aligned with your left foot. Hands to your hip points. As you exhale, bend the right knee towards the pinky edge of your foot. Let your knee or let your hips stay stable. Straighten. If you notice when you bend your knee that your knee comes forward, widen your stance. Bend. Notice your pelvis. Straighten. Bend. Notice your pelvis. Straighten. Bend. Hold. Widen your stance so that your knee can stack directly over your ankle joint. Hands to your pelvis. And then take your left hand to the outside of your right knee. Right hand to the outside of your right knee. Find that barrier, knee presses out. Feel your outer right hip wrapping down towards the floor as you press the knee out. Look down over or inside your right knee. Make sure you can see your big toe. Notice if the knee wants to pop in, bring it out. Arms out to the side. Rotate your rib cage and your head towards your left hand. Keep the rib cage rotating back as you just turn your head towards your right hand. So this is Virabhadrasana 2 or Warrior 2. Straighten your right leg. Turn the toes in and step back. Come down onto your knees again. So we worked this pose with the front leg. So what we're doing with the front leg is external rotation. And we're going to concentrate more on what the back leg is doing. So bring your right leg out to the side and turn your toes towards the long edge of your mat and the outer edge of your foot align with the short edge of your mat. So feel that. See if you can lift, which you won't be able to, but imagine that you could invert your foot. So lift the ball mount of your big toe and heel off the floor as you press the outer edge down. Just feel what happens in your inner thigh. And then lift up, hands to your hips, and try that again. So think of rolling the inner edge of your foot off the floor as you press the outer edge of your foot down. And then bring your the inner edge back down. Arms reach over your head. Continue to keep that outer leg strong. And then side bend. Right hand comes to the top of your, outside of your knee. Push your left shoulder back. Right shoulder forward as you twist open to the left. Keep pressing the foot into the floor as if you're trying to push the outer edge down more. Lift up. Release both hands to the floor. Knee to the floor. Sit back. Knees can separate slightly. Hands reach forward. Notice what you feel going on in your hips. Then hands underneath the shoulder, press up. Hands and knees. Take your left foot out to the side. Left heel is in line with your right knee. Roll to the outer edge of your left foot. And then spread the inner edge to bring the ball mount of your big toe and your inner heel back down. Feel how that translates all the way up your leg and into your hip. Keep that awareness and lift up. And then again, rock to the outer edge of your left foot and then spread your inner edge down. You might feel something going on here and here. Arms reach over your head. Shoulder above knee. Side bend to the left, hand to the outside of the knee. Push the right shoulder back as you rotate the left shoulder forward. Look under your left arm. Keep the awareness of the foot pressing down. Reach both arms up. Fold forward, hands to the floor. Separate the knees, toes together, press the hips back, walk the hands forward, look between the thumbs, and then lower the forehead to the floor. Hands underneath the shoulders, press up, and then stand up. Okay. Outer edges of your feet parallel. Hip points align. Bend your right knee forward and take the leg out to the side. Notice what happens to the hip point. So engage the outer right hip. You can take your foot again to your calf, or perhaps take it up a little higher. Foot to your leg, leg to your foot. Notice what's happened to your pelvis. Reach through your inner knee, down and out as the pelvis continues to square forward. Take your outer left hip, pull it back. So the glute engages as the pelvis stays facing forward. Release. Step your feet wide. Turn the left toes in slightly. From the top of the leg, rotate the right foot out 90 degrees. Heel to heel alignment. Hands to your pelvis. Hip point square forward. Bend the right knee. Widening your stance is needed so that your knee bends directly above your ankle joint. Push the knee out, wrap the hip under. Take your elbow to your right knee. Take your hand to your top of your right knee. Imagine you could push your knee forward as you drag the hip back. So creating that sense of your outer hip pulling back. Press the outer edge of your left foot down and then inner edge down. Elbow back to the knee. Reach the left hand back, turn the palm up. Rotate the right rib cage open so that you're trying to take your heart towards the sky. And then stretch your left hand towards the right wall. Bicep towards ear. Keep pushing down through the outer edge of the back foot. Keep pushing the knee out as you hug the outer right hip in. Bring your hand back to your hip. Reach inside, grab your shin, and straighten your right leg. Take your left hand to your right rib cage. Pull it open towards the right, left. Lift your left wrist directly over your right shoulder. Push your feet down. Left hand to your hip. Bend your right knee. Right hand to the hip. Press up. Straighten the leg. Turn the toes in. Step back. All right. Right foot takes the weight. Hands on your pelvis. Hip points forward. Bend your left knee. Keep the hip points pointing forward as you turn the knee out to the side. Then either foot to calf, or maybe grab the ankle and take it to your inner thigh. Bring your hands back to your pelvis. Do what you need to do to keep your bowl from spilling. Outer right hip, pulling back. Left knee pulling down, pushing back, but the pelvis squares forward. So your outer hip muscles are working to stabilize the pelvis. Bring the knee forward, down. Step your feet wide. Ankles underneath your wrist. Turn your right toes in slightly. From the top of your leg, turn your left toes out 90 degrees. Hands to your pelvis. As you bend your knee, keep your pelvis squared towards the long edge of your mat. Look down inside your left knee. Make sure the knee is over your ankle joint, widening your stance is needed, and that you can see your big toe. Hands out to the side. Rotate ribs towards the right. Look over your left hand. Imagine your hand behind your knee, pressing the knee out to engage the outer left hip to wrap it down towards the floor. Press through the outer edge of your right foot. Then side bend, bringing your elbow to your left knee. And then taking your hand to your left knee. Imagine pushing the knee forward as you draw your hip crease back. So wrapping your outer left hip down towards the floor. Knee above ankle joint. Bring the elbow back to the knee. Right hand to the rib cage, rotate it open. Reach the right hand back, palm up. And then bicep beside your ear. Find the outer edge of your right foot. Press it down as if you could lift your inner edge off the floor. Reach down, grab your shin with your left hand and straighten your right leg, left leg. Right hand to the rib cage. Rotate rib cage open. Right hand wrist directly over your shoulder. Gaze up towards your thumb. See if you can find that same awareness of your outer left hip. Hugging in to rotate the knee open. Bend your knee. Elbow. Come back up. Virabhadrasana 2. Straighten. Hands to your hip. Turn the toes in. Walk the feet back together. Awesome. Come down to the floor. So we've done a lot of things with our hips in external rotation. So we're going to do something at the end to bring our knees back into that internal. Oh, thanks, Siri. So we're going to bring the knees back into internal rotation. So before you lie down, align your heels with your sit bones. And Kevin, if you have a block, you can put the block between your knees. It's really good for that internal and more narrow. Yes. Yes. And feet not all the way together, but block distance apart. Yes. So bring the block between and wherever, walk them a little closer, just the feet. Good. And then take your heels as close to your sit bones as you can and lower onto your back. And then once you're on your back, if you can take your feet even closer to your sit bones, do that. If you have the block between your thighs, squeeze the block between your thighs. Feel that inside of your thighs engage. And Cindy, if you don't, just press through the inner edges of your feet. Bring your hands to rest on the floor beside your hips and spread your fingers wide. Put your hands into the floor, and one by one, snuggle your shoulder blades closer to your spine. And as you do that, you'll feel your spine lift off the floor. Bring your awareness to the inner edges of your feet. Press those down. And then as you inhale, lift your chest towards your chin as you lift your hips off the floor. If you have the block between your thighs, squeeze the block between your thighs. If you don't, press through the inner edges of your feet. And then imagine you could drag your heels towards your shoulder blades without actually moving your feet. As you do that, you're going to feel something going on the back side of your body. Lift your chest a little closer to your chin. And reach your tailbone between your knees. Relax your jaw, relax your tongue. Concentrate on your exhalations, getting that full release of the exhalation. Draw your chin closer to your throat. So creating that sense of double chin. Take one more breath. As you exhale, slowly allow your hips to grow heavy, releasing your feet to the floor. Walk your feet mat distance apart. Take your arms out, T to the body, so wrist in line with your shoulders. Keeping your feet mat distance apart, press your feet down, lift your hips and shift them slightly to the left. Then drop both of your knees to the right. So you'll come onto the outer edge of your right foot and the inner edge of your left foot. Your right knee might relax to the floor, your left knee definitely won't. Reach through your inner left knee towards the right to feel the stretch on the outside of your hip. Find those long exhalations. Standing poses can be very invigorating to the body, as is bridge pose. So you might find yourself doing short breaths, rushing the exhalation. See if you can find that sense of lengthening to complete the exhalation. Just notice the effect that that has on your body and on your breath. And shift knees back to center. Lift the hips, move them slightly to the right. Allow the knees to fall to the right. Walk the feet in. One by one, bring your knees up towards your chest and hug your knees to your chest. Try to keep your head on the floor and rock a little side to side. Allowing any tension or gripping in your lower back or rib cage to release. Take one more deep breath. As you exhale, extend your legs long. Allow the legs to open. Bring the arms down beside your body. Allow the palms to open. Shavasana, corpse pose. Keeping awareness on the exhalations. Noticing how soft and how long you can be present with that release. You're still in Shavasana. You're still lying down. As you stay present with your exhalation, fully releasing into that pause at the end of the exhalation, start to become aware of your inhalation. Notice how the inhalation rises from the pause of the exhalation. And that cycle of rising from the end to the beginning of the next. As if the inhalation is born from the pause of the exhalation. And slowly to bend the knees. Keeping your eyes closed and your head heavy, slowly roll onto your right side body. Pausing here. Allowing the release of the body, the heaviness of the muscles. That sense of release. And using your hands and arms, slowly press yourself up to a seated position. Eyes remain closed. And bring your hands to touch at heart center, resting your thumbs on your breastbone. This is Anjali Mudra, or prayer pose. As you inhale, lift your heart towards your hands. And as you exhale, bow your head into the space of your heart. Taking a moment to pause, thanking yourself for this time that you've made to discover the practice of yoga and to discover your body, mind, breath. Thank you. Namaste.